Welcome to Week 8 mini lecture in 7512 NSE Aviation Leadership and Communication. This week we're continuing on with a theme from the previous lecture. In the previous lecture we spoke about the different types of theories, starting with the vertical dyadic linkage theory, and then we moved on to team leadership. What we're doing in this one is we're extending the team leadership further, and we're talking about a concept that is being increasingly taken up in the world, which is self-managed teams. What are we going to be doing in this? Because we've already looked at teams before. Well, first of all, we're going to be looking at the advantages and disadvantages of teams. We just looked at the theory behind teams in the previous lectures. We're going to be talking about the 10 characteristics of effective teams and how the team leader can really make a difference. We're going to be talking about how the climate within a team can affect creativity. We're going to be talking about effective meetings. Teams always are getting together for meetings. It's a way that teams communicate. And in organisations, you can see some really great meetings, but you can see some appalling ones as well. We're going to be talking to show you how you can really run a good meeting. We're going to be talking about the difference between conventional teams and self-managed teams. So I said self-managed teams are they're not a new phenomenon, but they're still being taken up in organisations to varying degrees of success. And we'll continue on talking more about what makes for a great self-managed team. Okay, first of all, we spoke about teams, but often we hear the word group used as well. And there is a difference. And we'll talk about the difference between a group and a team. So, for example, you might hear about a working group being run within an organisation, and that tells you a little bit about the definition that groups generally are a group of individuals each doing a specific job, which added together makes up the total job, whereas a team often have to be interdependent and working together. So recognising that difference means that as a leader, you can be particularly effective at making sure that if it's a team exercise, your team doesn't work as a group. And that's an important one to recognise. The next thing, of course, is what are the advantages and disadvantages of teams? For example, when you apply for a job these days, people will often say to you at the interview, "We value teamwork. How do you think you have performed as a team player in your previous jobs?" So it's important to know what teams bring, so you can say, well, what have I helped bring to teams that I've worked on in the past? So the advantages, we've got synergy. We spoke about synergy in a previous mini lecture. That is, the total is more than the sum of the individual parts. The fact that we get lots of different minds, so we don't make errors. People pick up errors that other team members may be on the road to making. We get faster, better decisions sometimes, continuous improvement, innovation, self-motivation, empowerment. That is, a good team leader makes sure that he is using or she is using all the best parts of the team itself. This was where we go back to power, expert power, the people who've got referent power. And this leads to greater job satisfaction and people feel better on the Maslow scale. Some of the disadvantages, it's not all good. We've seen ourselves when we work in teams, we've got to conform and fit in with others. We can't often show our individuality because we're fitting in with others. Sometimes people like to be individual players so they don't fit in and they'll fight against the team because they feel that they've got the best solution, but people just can't see that they've got the best solution. We get social loafing, and this happens, for example, in the university when we have team assignments. We find people complaining that there's a team member who's just not pulling their weight. We get groupthink, that is, someone comes up with something and everyone says, yes, that's good. And we'll find groupthink in case studies is a very, very harsh reality sometimes in life. We get intergroup conflicts. For example, if you've got software and hardware people working together, very often they find it hard to get on. And we get very high levels of pressure and stress because people are having to often to conform to something that doesn't quite fit with their personality. The 4 phases of group decision making, and you may have seen these models before, but they work as much in reality as they do in the theory. We get the orientation phase when people are brought together for the first time. That is, the team arrives in a room, it may be a particular project that's forming up. And there are a lot of new people suddenly being brought together, and people are sort of sussing each other out and saying, well, you know, who's this person and how they fit in. Then we get the storming, as the team has to decide what's the solution to the problem we're going to solve. And there are different options, and people will think, my option's the best one, and we'll get fighting. And as we'll learn later in conflict, conflict is not a completely bad thing. It can help creativity. Then, of course, as people start to settle in, get to know each other, start to get on the path to the solution, we get the forming stage, and then finally we get the performing, where people are all happy working together, and sometimes people talk about a final phase, which is the mourning stage. That is when the team breaks up. Some of the characteristics of effective teams, well, we won't go through all of these, but obviously common goal and objectives is important. Making sure you've got the right mix of people. We've got all the skills there to do the job. Good personal relationships amongst people. We've got some standard operating procedures. Trust. Teams need trust. Everyone's got to trust each other. Where there's mistrust, it's like a cancer to the team. Good communication skills. Everyone is keeping other people in the picture as to what they're doing. This is particularly important in project management. And there's top management support. That is, if the team needs extra resources, top management comes to the party and does that. What are some of the things that foster creativity in a team? This is a hard thing because very often teams are brought together to solve a problem. And the one thing that we know is that solving a problem demands creativity. That is, there's not just one solution, there may be a number of solutions, but which is the best one? So this is important. So we've got to make sure we've got the right people to put in the team. And that means knowing what are the resource pool that we have and how we can draw upon that. Making sure we give the team members greater autonomy. Nothing is worse than trying to work in a straitjacket and where team members have to keep going to senior management for approval on things. That holds them back. Protection against creativity blockers. And a simple creativity blocker is someone comes up with an idea and someone says, oh, we've done that before and it didn't work. Well, it mightn't have worked before, but it might work in this situation. And we've got to recognise that and other things like that that really hold teams back. The next thing, of course, is making sure the team's got the time, the money and the other resources. We said before, a leader who can't provide all the resources to get a job done is not going to have strong support from the followers. Followers like leaders who have got the power and the influence to get the team everything they need to do the job. Sorts of teams we've got, we spoke about this in the objectives. We have functional team. Functional team is generally people made up of a particular skill set. For example, in an airline, it could be the maintenance people. The next thing is we get cross-functional teams. And for example, if an airline is going to be going into a new destination, then we might have to have a functional team that's set up with the operations people, the passenger handling people, the maintenance people, and so on, working together to set up the new route into the new destination. We have a virtual team. Very often, people are spread across wide geographic areas. We can't get them to meet together in the one place physically, so we have to have people phone in or use modern media to communicate. And so we have the virtual team. That's a big part of the world these days. And most organisations very often can't afford to get everyone in the one place together. So virtual teams are a reality of modern business. Then we get the self-managed team. This is a concept. People say it's new, but it actually started back in the 1950s in Britain in the coal mining industry. And it's slowly built up. And the self-managed team is one which has got special requirements. It takes a lot of skill. Running a functional team is reasonably easy because you've got people all of the same background working together under fairly conventional circumstances. A self-managed team is a team that is simply given the objectives of what has to be achieved, and then they're allowed to get on and do the job. And that is often a lot harder than it seems. We spoke about meetings. Teams have to get together at different times to help communicate progress made, what are the problems coming up for the future, how do we solve those problems. So good meetings just don't happen. They have to be planned out. And we'll be talking to you about what it takes to really do a good meeting. Setting up clear objectives, making sure you've got all the right people there, having a clear agenda set, and then most importantly, writing the leadership. For example, I've gone along to meetings where I've seen particular people chairing a meeting that have just run absolutely outstanding meeting. Things have gone perfectly, no time's been wasted, everything has been decided very, very carefully, and most importantly, the outcomes have been positive. Conducting meetings themselves, of course, we will go through that, and of course, making sure you handle problems with different members or attendees. We said before, people are like snowflakes, they're all different. You get some really great people at meetings, but sometimes you get people at meetings who perhaps aren't as good as what we would hope for, and you're not always going to get what you want, but you as the leader can make sure you control the situation, they don't take over control of the meeting, so you keep it on track. And you can also show those people how they can become better participants. So in this lecture, whilst we've gone through it very, very quickly, the one thing that we see is that working in teams is an important part of life in any industry, but particularly in aviation, because the consequences of poor performance can be so bad. We must make sure that we've got very strong and effective teams. As a leader, you can make a team or break a team. And within teams, life in an organisation these days is about solving problems. And we've got to have creative solutions. In creating those type of solutions, we have to often get together for meetings. And meetings can either be time wasters or they can be highly productive times together. And you as a leader really decide as to how productive and effective your meeting is going to be. Self-managed teams are becoming more and more a part of modern business, but self-managed teams mean delegating the powers, letting the team get on with the job, and making sure that everyone within the team gets to use their particular strength. And you as the leader can often be a part of that. You as the follower can be a part of that also. And we're going to be described as how top management really helps ensure the success of self-managed teams. This is a really important part of the course. Teams are a reality of modern life, as we said. You as a leader will be judged by how effectively you work either as a follower within a team or how you run your teams for the future. This lecture will show you a good way to be skilled in that area. Thank you.